Hello, I'm Robert, science blogger and fact checker, and help people with things that scare them. And for our Facebook group Doomsday Debunked. And I thought I'd talk to you about how I do my research for these stories, to help other debunkers and to help people who are scared as well. It's kind of doing the opposite direction of how you normally behave when you're scared and you go online and you panic. So someone was scared of stormquakes, and they said that they'd heard that these could cause the earth to split apart. And you've got an occasional thing that people sometimes worry about for the big earthquakes. It's it's not risk at all. There's no risk of anything really major like that happening with any earthquake. But anyway, so what I did was I searched for stormquakes, which was you look for a keyword in whatever they gave you, and then these are the search results. Now you go and look like that. Now if you are a scared, panicking person, you're going to look like that, and you could say, scientists cover earthquake-like phenomenon are boring. Hurricanes trigger earthquakes. That looks a bit more scary. Ocean storms create dangerous waves above the city of storm surface. Stormquakes below. That must be the one to go and look at. And then after clicking a bit more, you get on YouTube maybe you click on that when you get on YouTube. And a little bit while later, you get someone saying it's going to cause the earth to break apart. And that's how you end up as a result of your panic. And then your filter is working the wrong way from how it should. And it just constantly leading you to the most scary things until you get these totally nuts sites that's the most scary and you think they're the right ones. But this is much more likely to be the correct. So if I was into videos, I'd probably click on that and then keep on looking for more and more sober videos. But actually, I find it much easier to research through these written things. So go and have a look down, and then I look also at what the source is. So I mean, that doesn't look too bad. I could have just clicked through that. I tend not to click through National Geographic because they've done a few ones which have been, although generally a lot of their stories are good, they have done a few very exaggerated ones. So you kind of look at what the source is, and you get used to which sources give you good, reliable news. And National Geographic, it's just a bit pot luck. Some of them are excellent, and some of them are not. So I didn't click through to there. I didn't click through that one straight away. And this one, so I went down to this one, for instance. Powerful storms may be causing offshore stormquakes. Strong ocean swells hammer ridges on the seafloor and produce the earthquake-like. I'm afraid you got earthquake-like up here. And that sounds, it's much more likely to be earthquake-like than earthquake if it's a new phenomenon. You're not going to be discovering new types of earthquakes. And then that's another one I looked at, another one. That's the actual paper. So then these are the ones I kind of filtered down to. So that's the CNN one. I did actually go back to that in the end. This is the actual paper itself. So if you look at the abstract and you look at the plain language summary, then that gives you some papers, then especially if they have a plain language summary, it's quite easy to read. And so you're going right back to the source. And they say that they generated these strong, long-period ocean waves which kind of interact with the ocean banks. And I mean, it's a little bit techy, but not too much. And a newly invented geophysical, which involves interaction of the atmosphere, ocean and the solid earth. They're not really earthquakes. This Science News was a good one, and that was the best one in terms of finding out what they actually are. And then you need a little bit of background to reading these as to, so this I have already. They talk about magnitude 3.5, and this is what the CNN one explains it. So it explains that there. Motions are minor and humans can't really feel them, Van said. Velocities are not really, let's create a bit of space. Get out of the way. That's significant. I always like to re-emphasise that stormquakes happen because of storms. When extreme storms happen, I think that's our first concern. So we've gone all the way from the earth cracking open right down to it's something so minor you can't actually feel it. And most people won't feel it. And then if you look here, the lower, they said magnitude range 3.5, and these would, the lower range of magnitude 3 is felt only by a few people at rest, especially building upper floors. And the stronger ones are felt, but they're often not recognised for what they are. So if you thought you felt a heavy truck going past, but you didn't actually see one, or if your car's rocked slightly, and that could be a magnitude 3.5 or higher earthquake. But nobody would, unless you're very aware of earthquakes, you're not even going to guess what it was. So that's the sort of thing we're looking at. So then I actually found the paper itself. That's just the abstract. It's behind a paywall, but for what I look for there, go back to my search results. So this is very useful if you're debunking. There's some of these that you get to know that they tend to be the highest quality ones, the highest ranking ones. But I found that with Science Alert. So I've got to know that they tend to. Where's the Science Alert? There we are. I clicked there, and then they gave a link to this is provided by Cube Access. Cube Access. If you and go and find which is the Science Alert, not that. I'll just go and click through to it. So click through to Science Alert. So this is a useful tip for debunkers. Click through to that, and it could be that the BBC often do that. The CNN might possibly have it, and then you go down to where the authors write, or it could be say the paper. So you click on that, and they don't actually tend to publicise it, but it just happens. And you click to that, and you'll get this thing coming up, and we'll get it in a minute. See this little cube coming up, and it'll say readcube access. And this is free access to the paper itself, which is provided so long as you link to it from some major, or this is for Wiley, you also get it for Nature, the various ones. It's called readcube access, and this gives you the full paper. So then you can scroll down and read about it properly. And so this is where they are. And those red regions, if you go and look at the thing, it says the red is the Stormquakes. And this is the region that doesn't have them. This is the region that does have them. And then blue are the proper earthquakes. So there are loads and loads of them, but they're very minor effects. So the blue there are the earthquakes. And then the red here are the stormquakes. And they found, I think, 14,000 of them. So very, very common. I'm not sure what the time period is. 2006 to 2015, so about a decade. So over a decade, there was all those things. But then you had storms hitting another region. If a storm hits there, you don't get them. So it's this very special configuration of the coast that leads to these stormquakes. And the research is still ongoing, and they haven't yet found out exactly, not entirely sure what causes them, but it seems to be to do with waves generated by hurricanes hitting shallow ocean banks, which are like low hills but on the bottom of the sea. And then as they do that, they cause these kind of seismic effects. But it's quite surprising because they're kind of point sources, like an earthquake. So what is able to focus the energy when you've got a huge storm coming in, and how does it manage to focus into a kind of point source, like an earthquake? And so there's some kind of focusing going on. It might be, like you've got a bank like that and another one like that, and depending on the way the storm is going, it kind of focuses on that particular point. So, so that is still to be researched. So anyway, so that is all just reading up, I found, and then you go and you look through all the ones, so bring up a few of them, and then look for the one that explains it best, which was, for me, was the Science News. I got some details. Oxford Student was quite good. That gave me a first understanding of it, and then I found Science News, which is there, and it gave a much more detailed understanding. And then finally, CNN had interviewed the chap. So if you go to the big ones, like CNN, BBC, and New York Times or Washington Post or whatever, then they'll often have these interviews with the actual researchers, so those are worth focusing in on. And actually, especially reading the actual words that they quote from the person they've interviewed. And that's usually a sign it's going to be reasonably okay, unless it's about climate change, in which they nearly always exaggerate. But on most topics, then if they've interviewed the actual researchers, then they're probably presenting it reasonably well. So that's hopefully helps some of you with debunking and helps some of you who are panicking. And just go a quick reminder. So you search for it, and then you do the you look in the opposite direction of what you would naturally do when you're panicking. Look for the most sober kind of things. Look for things that are almost seem to be downplaying it, because the journalists won't actually downplay it if it actually is actually serious. You know, you don't get, it's very rare, you don't really get stories that downplay what happened, what was discovered. So if they say earthquake-like, in other words, says it's an earthquake, hurricanes trigger earthquakes, and scientists discover earthquake-like, then the downplayed, what seems to be the less dramatic one, is much more likely to be correct, because they just don't do, people just don't do that kind of downplay it. If it really was an earthquake, they wouldn't say earthquake-like. So go in that opposite direction of what your panic kind of leads you to do. Because it's like, when I think it's sort of maybe built in from evolution, that back when we used to live in caves and so on, and then if there's a little trigger of something in the branches, then you leap to the most dramatic conclusion. If someone shouts out saber-toothed tiger, and someone else says no, it's just a branch breaking, then you'll just run and assume it's a saber-toothed tiger, because that's the safest assumption. And even if 99 times out of 100, the one who says the branch breaking is correct, still, for that just one chance in 100, evolutionarily, it's worth running if someone shouts out saber-toothed tiger. So it's like that. But that is not the best way to deal with your news. Don't read up the ones that say saber-toothed tiger. Look at the ones that say the branch is breaking, and that's where you'll get your accurate news.